The only thing he wished for was to be happy, to fall in love one day, to laugh in the company of good friends, and to end up living a completely ordinary school life. That was what he had always asked for. On Monday, he was beaten up. On Tuesday, toilet water was dumped on him. And on Wednesday, his personal photos were leaked online. On Thursday, he started planning his permanent journey to the metaphysical world. Today is Friday. Surely, if he falls from that height, it will be fatal. However, it's possible he might survive if he lands on the bushes. All he needs to do is plan his trajectory to fall directly onto the ground. Before he could take any action, a girl appeared, commenting that there was someone else there too. He didn't think anyone else would be there, and now he doesn't know what to do. Glancing quickly at the girl, he noticed that she turned halfway around. He tried to ask her to wait, worried she might be going to call someone. But what she actually did surprise him. She caught a bird with her bare hands. Showing him the animal, she said was a crow, and that its body had been lying there on the terrace. Since she was already talking to the boy, she asked if it was his wish to be as alive as that crow. Because if he planned to go through with it, it would be much better to hand his life over to her instead. At first, he didn't understand anything about this proposal, and the girl stated that dying was a great waste. There were still many fun things that could only be done by those who are alive. That comment made him angry. He said she didn't know anything about him and couldn't say what would be best for his life. Faced with this, he assumed she had only come there to make fun of him. However, the girl claimed that wasn't the reason she had come to the terrace. Her real intention was to give the boy's life a better purpose. This statement about his life made him think again. As an example, she asked what came to his mind when he looked at that crow. The girl wanted to know if he didn't find that dead body cute, but all that showed on the boy's face was complete disgust. Responding to her, he said he didn't find it even slightly beautiful, to which she also agreed. Because that body was already dead, and it was nothing more than a stinking, rotten pile of garbage. Garbage, that was exactly how he was treated at school, like an idiot, like human trash. The creature was definitely in a better place than he was, only becoming garbage after its death. He, on the other hand, was a piece of garbage even while alive. The girl asked if that was why he wanted to end his own existence. And indeed, that was the reason that motivated him to climb up to the terrace that day. Even so, she was there as if she were giving him a lesson, and the boy wanted to know what she intended with all this. Despite their conversation, she had no intention of stopping him from doing what he wanted. She didn't know anything about him, but she could say that he surely must have a miserable life. Framing him between her fingers, she asked him to tell her more. Would he really be okay with being trash for the rest of his life? That question made him angry because there was a part of him that didn't agree with that. Because he also wanted to have a normal life, to have friends and laugh like other people do. And even though having a girlfriend was completely out of the question, he would like to live the best days of his youth. Now the girl understood better how he felt. Clinging to the railing, she said she could guarantee him a life like that. That statement left the boy completely stunned. She started climbing the railing to get closer to him. If he was interested in finishing his years at school, he should hand over control of his life to her. He should become her puppet, and only then would he be happy. And since he wanted to have a girlfriend, if he really became her puppet, she wouldn't mind helping him with that in any way she could. That was definitely not a bad deal being offered to him. Now she wanted to know if he wished for that to happen. Still a little hesitant, he said that wasn't what he wanted. Suddenly, the girl grabbed him by the knot of his tie. She had jumped off the ledge saying that they were doing this now. As they fell, she proposed a condition. If they both survived, he would have to become her puppet. While they were in freefall, he wondered if this was really happening. The ground is approaching and death is becoming increasingly imminent. While falling, he recalled some unpleasant moments from his life. Any reason was enough for him to go through a session of humiliation. Repeated situations that he no longer wanted to be a victim of. During these moments of humiliation, he always wondered why this happened to him. But he was completely powerless, unable to express his anger. He just hoped that all those people would rot in hell. The fall was over. They had landed on the bushes, and he began to feel a sharp pain. Soon he started to agonize, possibly having broken his arm during the fall. Beside him was the girl who smiled at everything that had happened. The fall hadn't been dangerous enough to end their lives. Then the girl grabbed his arms and said that from now on, he would be her puppet. Now it was necessary for them to start understanding each other better. And once again, she emphasized that the boy had become her puppet. She would manipulate the strings that controlled him. In this way, he would dance for her. To make it easier to understand, she asked him to imagine himself as a remote control car. He still didn't know why she was doing this, but for the girl, the reason was very simple. She was tired of living her own life, so she decided she would control someone else. And in doing so, she would create the perfect life for that person. Kneeling before him, she swore she would lead him to a perfect and happy life, so he had to become her puppet. The boy was now intrigued, wondering if he could truly be happy. Because if it were possible, he didn't mind being a puppet. The only thing he desired was to be happy. Consoling him, she said yes, happiness was possible. And now here was the first command for him to have a happy life. Approaching his face, she asked the boy to close his eyes, and so he did. She kissed him as if they were lovers. Of all possible things, this one definitely hadn't crossed his mind. This made him thoughtful, wondering why he had been suddenly kissed. The girl explained that a kiss releases hormones in the body like oxytocin, a happiness hormone, putting the body in a euphoric state. One of her goals is for all her puppets to be happy. A story with a happy ending is always better to watch. That's why he will be happy, and to achieve that, he must obey all her commands. However, she doesn't need a disobedient puppet, and if he ever rebels, she will break him. Now there's another command for him. The girl wants him to share one of his desires. He doesn't quite know what to think to give her as an answer. To make it easier for him to understand, she asked what he would wish for if he wanted a happy life and met a magical genie. If he were allowed to wish for anything, he would like to take revenge on everyone who bullied him. After hearing this, the girl said that it was an excellent idea. He had done very well in revealing his desire, because now she would fulfill it. This is his wish to get the opposite, a request that pleased the girl a lot. Patting his head, she assured him she would make this wish come true. The day passed and he returned home. He is lying in bed, his arm bandaged from being injured in the fall. In the end, he thought that girl was just a weirdo. Even though she said she would fulfill his wish, nothing had changed. It would have been better if he had just died. Looking back, since his first day at school, nothing had gone well. It's hard to believe he had been bullied for such trivial things. His life really isn't worth anything at all. While thinking, he wished that tomorrow would never come. Even so, he had to go back to school. The chair he sits in is completely vandalized, and someone can't believe he came back anyway. The boy said the trash was making the whole room stink. He was surprised that he had broken his arm. He assumed the boy must have fallen and felt a lot of pain. He wanted to write something on the cast of his arm but didn't know what to write. Knowing he was about to be humiliated, he didn't let the guy write anything. After that reaction, the boy seemed to lose interest. He said the boy was a buzzkill and should just go sit down already. However, that behavior wasn't normal, leaving him thoughtful. While going to his seat, someone said they would show the others something really cool. That guy always does whatever he wants. As expected, he kicked the boy from behind. The force of the impact sent him to the ground, dragging some desks and chairs. The jerk was bragging, saying it was a clean and well-executed kick. He wanted to know if anyone had recorded what he did, and one of his friends said they had. They got entertained by the recording, saying it turned out really cool. Meanwhile, the boy who was assaulted stood back up again, and that was a sign he was fine, ready to take on round 2. This time, the jerk planned to use his fists. Before the assault could continue, a girl entered the classroom, greeting everyone. It was the same girl who had interacted with him the other day. She wanted to know what they were doing. The jerk immediately found her very attractive. Interested in her, he asked which class she belonged to. The person who seemed to be the teacher said the girl was part of this class since she was a transfer student. He was surprised she was a transfer student, even more so when he saw her waving at him. Upon hearing this, the jerk questioned why the teacher hadn't told him before, to which she replied that she had announced it during the previous day's assembly. Knowing this, he apologized for not listening and being polite, asked for the girl's name. She said her name was Tamada Kubaru. After that, she wrote her name on the blackboard. Approaching the jerk, she said it was a pleasure to meet him. Seeing that even her name was beautiful, he wanted her phone number too, and the girl shared it without any issues. Using a QR code, the jerk added her to his friends list. He expressed his wish for them to get along, and the jerk introduced himself as Ryuya. The protagonist observed the interaction with sadness, until the girl looked at him with interest. She wanted to know the name of the boy with the injured arm. Walking over to him, completely ignoring the jerk, she said she had missed the chance to ask his name the day before. He stuttered a little before answering, but he said his name was Keiba Yudo. The girl said it was a very nice name and that she was happy to have met him. To the jerk, the fact that the girl showed any interest in him was a sign she had something loose in her head, and he started sharing embarrassing stories about Kaiba. Walking up to him, she wanted to know why she should care about that, because in her honest opinion, it seemed like he was about to tell a very boring story. Looking at the teacher, she asked where her seat was. She was told she would be sitting next to Keiba. For her, this was definitely fate, and she was thrilled to have the chance to sit beside Keiba. The jerk, watching everything unfold like a spectator, was speechless. He was completely unable to understand why the girl had chosen the other guy and not him, because in his mind, Kaiba was just a loser who stepped in dog poop. He couldn't comprehend why Kaiba was chosen. This couldn't be happening. Using his phone, he was ready to humiliate Keiba once again. He would invite the new girl to a virtual group, then post a video of Keiba being humiliated. During lunch break, Kaiba and the girl decided to eat together. It was the break they had for lunch. Kaiba wanted to know if she couldn't eat with someone else, but the girl refused. After all, this was the perfect opportunity for a strategic meeting. Eating his sandwich, he still didn't understand what she was suggesting. So she asked if he had completely forgotten what had happened the day before, because defensively, they were going to get revenge on everyone who bullied him. She told him she had been invited to join the class's virtual group. She even showed him, and there was one of the videos where Keiba was being humiliated. Certainly, the jerk wanted her attention and was upset about being rejected. As Keiba was continuously humiliated in the video, he asked her not to watch it. She said there was no need to react like that since she had already seen its content. She mentioned she also feels embarrassed when she's naked. Keiba became even more upset. The situation was truly miserable. The girl asked if she shouldn't have watched it, and he confirmed that she shouldn't have. Feeling humiliated, he had no idea why she had seen it. To her, it might be a simple embarrassment, but the situation for him was much worse, something he didn't want anyone to see. The girl asked if that was truly what he wished for. Then she asked him if that hadn't been published on a public platform, and he confirmed it definitely wasn't in the group. She smiled maliciously because if this were the same case, they could post the original video themselves. A completely absurd suggestion, Kaba thought. Kiba refused to do something so humiliating. No one in their right mind would do such a thing. He even wondered if she had heard anything he said as he hated that video. The girl asked if it was his wish, then that the video wouldn't go viral, and indeed, that was what he wanted. Knowing this, she asked if he truly wanted to take revenge on those who bullied him. Even so, Kaba said there were other ways to get revenge on those people. If that's the case, she wanted to know how he intended to carry out his revenge. As she observed, he didn't know what to do. He could even change his tactics, but that would come at a cost. Even so, he didn't have many choices because the video was already in other people's possession. This made him realize the brutal nature of reality. There's no revenge without risk. It's impossible for him to be so naive as not to know this. He felt completely disappointed, and the girl even sympathized with his situation. She reminded him that the day before, he had been about to take his own life. And if he was strong enough to stand on the ledge, this situation was no big deal. Who knows, maybe he lacked the courage to carry out what he had planned to do yesterday. Agitated, he said he was determined to follow through with his plan. The girl watched him with a certain satisfaction. If he was truly determined, this situation wouldn't be difficult at all. She had even created an account and taken the trouble to write the post for him. All he needed to do was press the button to upload the content. The video description was peculiar, and they would pretend to be bullying him, as if the one responsible for it was blatantly confessing the crime they had committed. This was a much more secure way to draw justice to this cause. That single video would capture everyone's attention, and since the account was new, it didn't have any followers yet. But by adding some viral hashtags, it would be easy to make the content popular. His video of humiliation would undoubtedly set the internet ablaze, and all they needed to do after that was let society deliver its justice. Worried, he imagined that this could cause numerous problems for his school. The girl wisely reminded him that the school didn't care about him. In fact, he was the only person capable of saving himself. It didn't even make sense to worry about adults who weren't willing to help him. And if he didn't do this, he would end up miserable for the rest of his life. And that wasn't the outcome he wanted for himself. Trying to comfort him, she said it was okay, he just needed to do as she instructed, because that way, he would surely be happy. Besides, she would always be there to protect him. With the phone in his hand, he hesitated for a moment before posting. With a single click, the video now belonged to the internet. At first, he thought no one had noticed what was happening. Surely no one would notice since it was posted from an account with no followers. However, as seconds passed, reactions began pouring in. Many people started reacting to his post, and with that, numerous new followers began joining. Likewise, people started expressing outrage at the bully's behavior. He was so shocked by the immediacy of it that he dropped his phone on the floor. Behind him, the girl congratulated him, saying he had done a great job. She picked up the phone from the floor, saying that all they needed to do now was wait, so it was better to head back to class. Elsewhere, a student ran up to the bully with alarming news. He had no idea what was happening, so his classmate told him to check the class group. Even he found it hard to believe what he was seeing. He had no idea who had done this, but it was just a post on the internet, and it wasn't a big deal. Soon people would forget about it, and no one would find their school, and even if they did, no one would have the courage to show up there. A classmate walked away, and a strange guy asked if no one would really have the courage. It didn't seem like it, but that guy was a streamer who worked specifically with this kind of thing. Even so, the bully didn't seem to understand what that meant. He didn't even know there was a niche for this on the internet. That guy may not look like it, but he had 5,000 followers. The jerk was impressed. That really seemed pretty cool. That day, the boy was going to be a guest in one of his live streams. He still didn't understand what was happening, but the guy asked him to put something on. Uncomfortable with the approach, he slapped the guy across the face. The guy turned to his phone and asked if people had seen that because the boy had just hit him. He said it was an accident, and the guy wanted to know if that was really the excuse he was going to use. He asked if that's what he tells his victims too, even when he teams up with other jerks to harass defenseless people. Trying to defend himself, the boy said they were just joking around. Once again, the guy looked at his phone and told his audience that the jerk thought it was just a joke. He said, without a doubt, the guy was a piece of trash, and among pieces of trash, he was the worst. It's people like him that ruin the society they live in. Because of that, the guy said he had to teach him a lesson since he was such a piece of trash. Judgment came quickly, and the guy started beating up the jerk. The jerk writhed in pain after being hit and still had the audacity to ask why he was being beaten. Unfortunately, the live stream got blurry because the guy was too busy hitting the jerk while holding the camera. But he asked his audience if they saw what had happened. Some said hitting the jerk was going too far, and he defended himself by saying he didn't hit the boy. He even said the jerk was wearing the channel's badge, and everyone who wears it consents to being on the stream. In the end, he claimed it was all an act, and the jerk was exceptional at playing his role. Looking at his phone, he assured his audience that no one had actually gotten hurt. The discussion started among viewers, with some defending him, saying he only retaliated against the jerk's aggression. Meanwhile, the piece of trash continued standing there in the background. The guy had one last question for the jerk. He wanted to know why he bullied that boy. The jerk took a while to respond. He needed to think hard about what had really motivated him to do that. He remembered seeing Kiba walking with perfect posture. He thought Kiba seemed like a really cool guy. That's why he approached him. He went up to the boy to start a conversation. He said he overheard some girls talking about Kiba as he entered and thought Kiba must be very popular. By distracting him, he caused Kiba to step in dog poop. It was unfortunate because Kiba seemed to be wearing new sneakers. Nearby, 2 girls approached. The first thing he said about Kiba was that he had stepped in dog poop. The girls told him to stop teasing Kiba, saying it wasn't funny at all. He said it was like slipping on a banana peel, but the girls replied that kind of humor suited him. Unfunny. Either way, he claimed it was better for Kiba, because now he had a funny story to tell. But Kiba was upset, shrugged the jerk's hand off his shoulder, and said it wasn't funny at all. At first, the jerk was left speechless. He didn't like the way Kiba looked at him. He then explained that what he really wanted was to be friends with Kiba. But the streamer didn't buy that narrative and thought the jerk was playing the victim to avoid judgment. It was truly pathetic, and he wiped the front of his shoe on the jerk's face. Back at school, Kiba heard what happened. It seemed the jerk had been attacked during lunch. The students started talking about how it really had happened. The school contacted the authorities and the culprit had already been arrested. As a result of the beating, the jerk needed medical attention. The teacher told everyone to go home early that day, and the class was abuzz over what had happened to the jerk. Kiba began to realize what had finally happened. To the girl beside him, she thought this was a beneficial outcome for him, because with this, they had achieved their goal. From now on, there was no one left to bully him. However, Kiba wasn't sure if this was the right decision and thought about it as they talked. The video continued spreading on the internet. To be honest, he was completely terrified about it, but that wasn't the only thing he felt. The girl suggested that they skip school tomorrow and go out on a date instead. Completely enchanted, he wanted to see what future she had in store for him. He went back home and couldn't stop thinking about how she had proposed they go on a date. Because of that, he couldn't get a single minute of sleep. He started wondering if he had even combed his hair, only to realize he was beginning to feel anxious. He's just an ordinary guy, yet that beautiful girl decided to go out with him. She was very happy to see him and asked why he was wearing his school uniform. He explained that his parents would know if he went out in anything other than his school clothes, so he planned to change in the bathroom. She understood and said he could change now, but once in the bathroom, he had no idea what to do. He was completely content at that moment. He was certain the girl must be dangerous in some way, but she was too beautiful, and like any other guy, he had a weakness for gorgeous women. When he returned to her, he saw a few guys trying to flirt with her. As soon as she noticed Kiba approaching, she walked over to him with a smile on her face, saying he had taken quite a while. The guys backed off, assuming she must have a boyfriend. Once they were together, she asked if they could go to the aquarium. Only inside in her company did he realize what was happening. Everything there was so beautiful, it almost felt like a dream. The girl found marine animals fascinating and was amazed by the size of the whale shark. They spent the day there, taking lots of photos and observing all sorts of animals. Even the dessert they ordered was very pretty. Sitting at the table, she asked if Kiba was enjoying himself, and he replied that he was. For her, it was nice to hear that from him. Once seated, he asked why she had invited him on this date. She said she did it with his future in mind. At first, he couldn't understand how this outing related to his future, but she explained that in the future, he would want to fall in love and go on dates. And this date was an introductory lesson to teach him how to shape his behavior and present himself as someone interesting. He needed to gather some experience. Otherwise, he might ruin his first real date. So that day was nothing more than a bit of practice. Intrigued, he asked if she would like to date him, but before he could finish his sentence, she said no. More directly, she explained that she didn't even like him that way. After all, they barely knew each other, and she wasn't interested in romance at all. All she wanted was to keep playing with her puppets. She was only there to pull the strings and guide him toward a happy life. To her, he was just a puppet. Nothing more, nothing less. They continued enjoying the day, taking photos and having fun until it was time to say goodbye. She thanked him for the pleasant day and asked if he'd be able to get home on time. Since it wasn't very late, it wouldn't be a problem. Knowing that, she finally said goodbye. She mentioned that she turned the photos from that day into an album, which made Kiba feel grateful. A familiar vibrating sound from his phone suddenly became audible. It was his father calling. When he answered, he was met with a torrent of complaints because his father had found out he had skipped school. The teacher had just called him, leaving Kiba feeling humiliated. His father told him not to bother coming home, wishing he would die on his way back. Only a despicable father could say something like that to his own child. This was one of the reasons why he hated talking to his father, who never thought about what he was saying. Knowing he was in trouble now, the girl asked if he was okay. She apologized, saying it was her fault for making him skip school that day. But it was fine for him, as he had accepted the invitation knowing the risks. Intrigued, the girl asked if he didn't get along with his family. Indeed, their relationship was not good at all. They barely looked each other in the eye. She apologized for bringing it up, saying people should appreciate their families. However, she added that he wasn't obligated to do so. Looking at him, it was clear how much this situation hurt him. No matter who it was, telling someone to die was always cruel. If he didn't like his family, she suggested he run away. He could come with her if he wanted, but for someone who didn't even like him that way, she shouldn't be saying such things. He couldn't just start depending on her. Unconditional love, she said that out of context. He didn't understand, and she explained that since she had no feelings for him, she had no expectations, whether physical or romantic. In other words, no ulterior motives. The only thing she wanted was to save him. She asked if that wasn't good enough. His memory started to blur. It was that day when everything happened. It was exactly on that day that he fell in love with her. As he hugged the girl, he was sure he had fallen for her. She then suggested they head home since she had an idea. They should buy some snacks at any convenience store and throw a party. The girl asked if he liked watching movies. She rented movies weekly, and shyly the boy admitted he liked them too. They went to the convenience store to buy what they needed, but there was something Keiba wanted to say to Tamada. He was thanking her for everything she had done for him, but she said she hadn't done anything extraordinary. She also noted that calling her by her family name didn't make them sound like friends, so he could call her by her first name. That left the boy flustered. She tried to get him to say her name, but he couldn't. Because of that, he ended up apologizing to her. He also thanked her for sponsoring their shopping trip since they were able to buy plenty of snacks. Pointing to a building, she said she lived there. He looked at the structure, noticing it was a massive building. Apparently, she lived in a high-end place. Opening the door, she invited him inside. "This is a very spacious apartment," Keiba remarked. He asked about her parents, but the girl said they weren't there. She lived completely alone in that apartment. Sitting on the sofa, she asked him to keep her company. She wanted to know if he had any movie preferences, but the boy said anything would do. However, there was one he was curious about, and she was too, having heard it was very good. They agreed to watch that movie. The two sat on the couch watching the film while Keiba reflected on how peaceful it all felt. He'd wished intensely for that moment to last forever. But then his phone started ringing again. It was his dad. The girl said it was okay and that he should answer it. Stepping outside, he wanted to know what his dad wanted. After all, he was still his father, and maybe he was genuinely worried. As soon as Keiba answered, he heard an extremely angry father on the other end. He replied that he was at a friend's house and had been allowed to stay the night. That made his dad even angrier. He ordered Keiba to return home immediately. He was sure Keiba was at a girl's house and said young boys like him were too naive, adding that he was on his way to pick him up. The whole situation only frustrated Keiba further because his dad had no tact. Keiba didn't want to go home either. Opening the door, the girl asked if he was okay and apologized, saying she had overheard everything. She noted that his dad tended to talk loudly, and since he was upset, it might be better for Keiba to go home. Then she remembered he didn't need to leave since his dad said he would come to pick him up, so they might as well stay and wait for his arrival. His dad's arrival was quicker than expected. He was already waiting outside. He demanded Keiba come down immediately, saying he had tracked him using his phone's GPS. Learning there was an app spying on his phone only made Keiba angrier. The girl asked if they should head down while Keiba noticed an envelope in her hands. She said she would convince his father that Keiba didn't need to go home. Keiba didn't understand, but she asked him to stay at the entrance. That was an order and he wasn't to disobey her. Without any manners, his father called her a tramp who had seduced his son, saying she even dressed like one. Inside, Keiba imagined this wouldn't end well. Not knowing what his father was capable of, he thought he should go outside too. As soon as his father saw him, he declared that Keiba was going home with him. Regarding that, the girl handed the man the envelope she was holding. It was full of money, and she had it prepared for emergencies like this. She told him to take the money and leave Keiba with her. Not understanding what was happening, Keiba assumed it must be some kind of prank. She claimed it wasn't an ask if 1 million wasn't enough. He was the kind of father no mother would give up her child for, especially not for dirty money. He said she must have gotten that money by selling her body since she looked like a slut, and Keiba tried to ask his father to stop. She suggested he think of other ways like investments, but he probably believed a woman could only get money that way. He was truly an uncreative and pitiful man. With him as a father, Keiba would never have a happy life. Irritated, he said it wasn't up to her to decide that, but the girl wanted to ask him a question. Why had he told his son to die? The man said he did it for his own good. When he was his son's age, his bosses used to say the same thing. Weak people have no place in this world. They were tough on him so he could learn that too. Inevitably, the girl laughed after hearing this. He didn't understand what was so funny, and she said it was an utterly ridiculous story. It only showed that he couldn't be bothered to care about his son. In fact, he probably didn't care about the boy at all. She wanted to know what he would do if his son actually died. The man said people don't just die because someone tells them to. Contrary to what he thought, they absolutely do, and very easily, especially when the person saying it is their parent. It's impossible for him not to know how his son feels. After all, he's Keiba's father. Convinced, the man said he did know how the boy had been feeling. Even so, he called him a coward and said that's why he was teaching him to be a man. She said he had the wrong impression and that words alone didn't count as education. After talking to him, she finally understood everything. That man was completely unnecessary for Keiba's happiness. She would be the one responsible for his happiness. The man only grew angrier, saying she didn't know anything and even suggesting she was planning to marry his son. Having a peaceful family to raise a child in is the first step to having a happy life, she explained. And to ensure he had such a future, she would help Kaiba boost his popularity, intelligence, achievements, and more. But she wouldn't be the one to build a family with him. She would simply act as his control tower. From that day forward, she would show how Kaiba could be happy under her control. Such a bold statement left them both deep in thought. To him, it was all a joke. After all, she was just a kid. If she was truly capable of doing that, she should prove it to him now. Taking her phone, she said she wouldn't waste any more time. She began talking to her father about something they had discussed earlier. She asked him to do it immediately and ended the call. The man didn't understand what was happening until his own phone started ringing. To his surprise, it was the company president, and the girl told him he should answer. It must be urgent. He answered, and the person on the other end apologized for the sudden call. They expressed gratitude for his work. However, they said it was necessary to let him go and apologize for the decision. They asked him not to hold a grudge as they also had a family to support. When the call ended, he asked if this was the girl's doing. Indeed, it was. She said she had asked her father to do this for her and asked if he was familiar with the Tomata real estate group. He knew exactly who they were as that company had bought the business he worked for, and that company was led by her father. So the girl had simply asked her father to fire him. This brought her back to the initial offer she had made him. She wouldn't even mind asking her father to rehire him. But if he continued being resistant, she would ensure he wouldn't be hired anywhere else. Frustrated, he accused her of joking, but she confirmed it was no bluff. Now it was up to him to decide what to do, because the fact remained he had been fired. As a grown man, he should surely know what the right choice was. The man collapsed to the floor in disappointment. He had no choice. The girl extended the envelope toward him, and he grabbed it, completely furious. It seemed he had made the right decision after all. Turning back to Kiba, she said she had removed an obstacle from his path. Now they could go back to watching the movie peacefully. She grabbed him by the arm to hurry him along. Kiba returned to the apartment completely incredulous about what had just happened. In the principal's office, the boy said he only did it because the girl insisted. Now they want to know what Kiba's relationship with her is. It's not for him to dwell on, so he decided he would ask the boy directly. Now they were back at the apartment where they could finish watching the movie. If what she had done, he wouldn't have to deal with his father anymore. A huge burden had been lifted off his shoulders. But at the same time, he wasn't sure if this was the right decision. He was still a minor, and leaving home was never a good idea. Even so, he felt a great deal of gratitude toward her and was thankful to have a place to stay. But he wasn't sure if everything would be okay, especially since he had cut ties with everyone in his life. Those people were still his family. It made him wonder what his mother would say when she found out. She probably wouldn't say anything since she always followed behind his father. Looking at him, the girl noticed he seemed deep in thought and asked if something was wrong. She wanted to know if he was worried about what had happened. If that was the case, she wouldn't judge him. After all, he had just been separated from his family. Still, she assured him everything would be fine. She promised to make him happy, and she swore it would happen. Kiba wanted to know why she always acted that way. The movie finally ended, and she said it had been a lot of fun. Even Kiba agreed, admitting he had been deeply moved by the story. The final scene had been great, but the girl thought it was bordering on cliché. She suggested another movie to watch next, and he couldn't believe they were going to watch his second film. The girl thought he didn't want to, but he revealed that he would actually love to. They ended up watching a romance movie, a classic choice for anyone having a date at home. She told him that all of this would serve as practice for his future, but he didn't believe something like that could happen to him. For now, she just wanted them to enjoy the movie. Usually, he didn't watch this type of film, so he ended up feeling a bit nervous. Then came a kissing scene on the screen that lasted much longer than he expected. It was definitely way too embarrassing for him. That was when the girl touched his hand. In moments like this, she said, it's expected that you hold the hand of the person watching with you. Then she demonstrated how it should be done. Taking advantage of their proximity, she suggested they kiss too. But that was too much for him, and he said they couldn't do that under any circumstances. The girl was intrigued, thinking he didn't want to kiss her. The truth was that he actually would like to, and because of that, she said it was exactly why they should try. Since she had no intention of dating him, she said that was why they shouldn't kiss. He told her she should have more self-respect, and the girl thought he was saying nonsense. She said she wouldn't mind kissing him, but he said that was exactly the problem. It would make him have expectations, and she shouldn't do that to someone she had just rejected. She found it odd since he had never confessed to her. Then he reminded her that when they were at the aquarium, she said she didn't like him. He said he was just defining their positions in this relationship, which left him feeling quite confused. Now she understood why he felt like he had been rejected. To him, the girl was truly a headache sometimes. And if two people weren't in a relationship, they shouldn't kiss so casually. No matter if she wanted him to be happy, she should at least have some morals. Since that was his stance, she said she wouldn't kiss him anymore. But thinking about his future, she still wished for him to gain some romantic experience. Hearing that, the boy was left speechless. Then she proposed that tomorrow at school, they should find him a girlfriend. Once there, she suggested they get straight to the point. He should write his own romantic comedy that day. She wanted to know if there was a girl he was interested in, and the only thought that came to his mind was that she was the one. Without revealing that, he said he didn't have anyone in mind. Since he had been bullied for so long, he hadn't had time to make friends, let alone develop feelings for someone. Knowing this, she realized they now had a starting point. Kiba said things weren't that simple, but she assured him he shouldn't worry. He didn't have an unattractive face, and it was only a matter of time before he got closer to a girl. He wasn't sure if that was a compliment, so she told him to look in a specific direction. The girl erasing the blackboard seemed to be struggling. She suggested he go help her. Maybe that way he'd become her hero. Doing this kind of thing just because someone told him to made him feel strange. Still, he approached the girl, asking if she was okay and needed help. In the end, he erased the board for her. Once the task was finished, she thanked him with great joy. With a smile on his face, he said it wasn't any trouble at all. And if she ever needed help again, she could just ask him. The other girl praised him, saying he had done well. It was only a matter of time before he became popular. He said it wasn't that easy, but she pointed out he was wrong. Being kind was extremely important and something people often undervalued. Kindness was an aspect of life often overlooked by those trying to flirt. And judging by the look on the girl's face, she must have appreciated that small gesture. At least that's what she said. But he didn't understand what she meant about writing his own romantic comedy. While he was in the hallway cleaning the floor, someone called him by name. It was the same girl he had helped earlier. She approached him just to thank him for his help. Since he took a while to respond, she reminded him that he had helped clean the blackboard. Kaiba said it was no problem at all. She didn't mean to come all the way to thank him, but she disagreed. There was something she wanted to say, though it might seem a bit sudden. The girl couldn't continue because she became too embarrassed. She ended up apologizing, saying she had accidentally bitten her tongue. What she really wanted to ask him was if he'd like to walk her home. This startled him, realizing it would just be the two of them. She told him not to take it the wrong way. It was simply to grab some donuts since a new shop had opened near the station, and she didn't have any friends to go with her. She explained she was a very shy person. Earlier, Kaiba had told her she could ask for help if she needed it. With tears in her eyes, she asked if his silence meant a refusal, but he assured her it didn't. He would gladly accompany her. She thanked him happily, saying they should meet after school. As she left, Tamada said he had managed to get a date after school, but he absolutely couldn't tell her he was living with another girl. Of course he wouldn't say that, but he didn't know how to handle the situation. It felt like he was caught in some kind of fake love triangle. Doing this made him feel guilty. Then he remembered that Tamada didn't have any feelings for him. He needed to let go of her as soon as possible. He didn't know what the future held, but it was important for him to make friends and expand his horizons. Before, that had been completely impossible due to excessive bullying. Finally, he could enjoy what life had to offer. The girl had one more request for him. Even if he went on the date, she wanted to hear all about it. She handed him a pen that was actually a disguised microphone. He also needed to wear some earphones that were actually listening devices so she could tell him what to say. That way he could follow her instructions even if they were apart. She warned him not to try anything funny while doing this. Bidding him farewell, she wished him good luck on his date. That was an enormous weight placed on his shoulders. While he was thinking, someone called out to him. It was the girl that he was going on a date with, asking if he had been waiting for her long. He replied that he hadn't, and they left school, heading toward the station. Kiba was fully equipped with the listening device and earphones. It felt a bit too strange for him, and through the earphones, Tamada asked if he could hear her. If he could, he should tap his ear twice, which he promptly did. Now he needed to pay attention to her words and repeat them one by one. He was to start immediately, listening to her instructions. He assumed this had to be a joke. Kiba asked the girl if she liked donuts. She said yes, and based on her response, he said he really liked that kind of sweet treat too. He repeated his words, feeling like he was almost dying of embarrassment. Finally, they arrived at the place she had mentioned. The girl kept guiding him, and he admitted this was his first time there. It wasn't the kind of store he usually went to. Looking at the items, he said they all seemed delicious, but there were so many it was hard to choose. The girl said she'd love to try them all, but 2 donuts would be too much for her to eat alone. He said he knew exactly how she felt about that. Then through his earpiece, he heard a suggestion to propose that they share the same donut. Looking at the girl, he followed the suggestion. He thought she might not want to do that, given her momentary silence. But she said she didn't mind as long as it was with him. That was great. They could place their order. He told her not to worry because besides ordering the donut, he'd also get a drink for her. The girl couldn't help but think he was really kind and thoughtful. He returned to the table with their order. The donuts looked absolutely delicious. She thanked him for his kindness and offered him money to cover her part of the order. He had been instructed not only to refuse the money but also to say something about it. He told her not to worry about the cost. It was just another kind gesture from him. But the girl said she'd feel terrible if she didn't pay. He was then instructed to take her hands and say something else. He told her he was trying to be a gentleman on this occasion and asked her to allow it. Overwhelmed, she said that was fine. After all this, she asked if there was a girl Kaiba liked. Tamada was thrilled with the progress they were making. He admitted there wasn't anyone he liked at the moment. That was great, she said, because if he liked someone, she'd have to kill them. What she said wasn't just absurd. The girl was crazy. With a smile on her face, she said she was only joking. Repeating the words from his earpiece, he told her she was very intense and almost gave him a heart attack. After that, the girl seemed to have something to ask him. She pointed out that the words he was saying didn't seem like they came from him. She wanted to know why he had an earpiece in his ear. Afterward, he had to remove the device, and Tamada realized she couldn't help him anymore. He explained that before meeting her, he had been listening to music and forgot he still had it on. Those words didn't convince her. She believed he still wasn't telling her the truth. Kaiba noticed a sudden shift in her mood. The girl started crying, thinking that in the end he didn't care about her at all. Kaiba tried to fix the situation, insisting that wasn't true. But she said it was fine because she knew that an amazing guy like him would never pay attention to someone like her. She apologized, assuming he must just want to go home now. He told her that wasn't how he felt. In fact, he had really enjoyed talking to her. He asked if she was still interested in going on more dates with him. She said she was interested in continuing the conversation, and once they were done there, she wanted to know if he'd be interested in going to her house. Kaiba was a little surprised by the proposal, and she assumed he might not want to. Now he didn't know what to do because going with her would mean leaving Tamada waiting, and he couldn't leave the girl alone in this emotional state. He agreed to go with her, regretting that he'd have to keep Tamada waiting. The condition was that he wouldn't stay long at her place. Once inside, he asked for permission to enter. He asked if she lived alone, and she said yes. Her parents were very busy but sent her money to support herself. She said she was very grateful for the parents she had. She asked him to make himself comfortable while she prepared some tea. Kaiba offered to help with anything, not realizing what she was about to do. She struck him on the head with a vase with brutal force. There was nothing he could do but fall to the ground as his blood gushed out. Finally, she said she would borrow his phone for a moment. She had suspected he had been lying to her the whole time. Checking his messages, she confirmed he had been talking to another girl. He needs to learn a small lesson, and she will do this for the other girl's sake as well. Tamada was already there, saying this girl was even more interesting than she initially thought. He could only feel his consciousness slowly fading away. When he woke up, his body was completely tied up. Above him was the crazy girl wearing nothing but her underwear, delighted that he was awake. He became nervous, not understanding why she was nearly naked. She explained that she didn't want to stain her clothes with blood, so she took them off. This made him extremely anxious because she said she would begin punishing him right away. She claimed he pretended to like that other girl and played with her heart, and for that, she would never forgive him. He said that was never his intention and asked who this girl she was talking about was. She told him she was referring to Arihara Ryo, but that was her name, confirming to him that the girl was insane for referring to herself in the third person. She clarified that she was actually the older sister of the girl and that her name was Rina. To him, this was strange as they looked identical. She explained that this was expected since they shared the same body. She asked if he had ever heard the term split personality. Apparently, this was a new concept for him. Her parents were a bit absent nowadays, but that hadn't always been the case. They used to beat her for any reason and often locked her up in the garden shed. The girl would beg them to let her out. She would cry for her father to open the door because she was terrified. But the more she screamed, the greater her panic grew, and nothing happened. In this state of complete despair, she wished for someone to save her. And that's when this second personality emerged to ensure she wouldn't feel pain. She needed to use the girl's body for that. She promised she would protect her. And that's how she came into existence. She exists to protect Ryo. This girl also has the right to be happy. That's why she can't stand men like him who toy with her heart. Now he would regret everything he had done to her. She decided to start with his eyes. She would carve up his beautiful little face with the edge of her blade. She was excited to begin slicing Kaiba's face. Desperate, he tried to suggest they could talk about the situation, but she had already passed the point of being able to talk about anything. He tried to explain what he was actually trying to do with her, but before she could begin anything, the doorbell rang. Someone was outside. The crazy girl said she would ignore whoever it was, but the persistent ringing prevented her from starting her work. Even the doorknob was being jiggled, making her wonder if this was some kind of prank. The sound was too suspicious. The person wasn't just manipulating the doorknob, but trying to break in. When the door finally opened, Tamada got a better look at what was happening. Kaiba was completely tied up, and there was a crazy person on top of him. For her, it wasn't difficult to open the door since she had plenty of tricks up her sleeve. Now there was something she needed to handle there. She said what was happening was utterly disgusting. Kaiba tried to explain that it wasn't what she thought it was and that he desperately needed help. She replied that all of this only happened because he refused to listen to her. The crazy girl realized the person on the other side of the phone was that girl. She confirmed it, prompting the crazy girl to declare that she would kill her too. Tamada apologized, saying she hadn't intended to upset anyone. All she wanted was for Kaiba to experience true love. That statement left the crazy girl thoughtful, as it didn't make sense. She said it had to be a lie, otherwise there wouldn't be a need for her to be in his ear telling him what to do. Tamada confirmed that she was mistaken about that because all she had done was give him instructions. She gave the instructions and he followed her orders. After all, Kaiba had entrusted his life to her. What he would say or even what shoes he would wear, all his decisions from now on would be hers to make. And at the end of all, he would have a happy life. She asked the crazy girl if she didn't think that was wonderful. Holding a knife with a boy tied up in her house, the crazy girl said everything she had heard didn't make sense, and that Tamada was insane. But she does not consider herself crazy. On the contrary, she is very resolute about everything she has said. Protecting herself with a knife, the crazy woman told them not to mess with her. She aggressively advanced towards Tamada, claiming that Ryo is not a toy to be played with. Trying to control the situation, someone suggested she calm down a bit. The crazy woman said she was perfectly calm and now ordered Tamada to shut up. It didn't take long for them to realize this person has a severe personality disorder and said that Ryo might feel sad about her actions. because if she ended the boy's life, she would become a murderer without even remembering what she had done. After saying this, the crazy woman began to look pensive. The distraction was all that was needed to take the knife from her hands. Once disarmed, she held the girl's head with her hands. Unexpectedly, she kissed her. She suggested they could all be very happy together. For that to happen, she would guide them all toward happiness. Riho does not think this is possible, but Tamada assures her that she is capable of making it happen. She acknowledges that the girl's life may have been very harsh up until then, but from now on, she will be able to enjoy it much more. The girl still has no idea how she can be happy, so they start thinking together about possible solutions. The immediate conclusion Tamada reached was that she does not know how this will be possible, because happiness can take many forms. Building a family, dedicating oneself to a hobby, or pursuing a career. Each person has their own concept of happiness. There are many choices to be made, but she will help her make those decisions. Then she asked if she would also like to become her puppet, but everything she had heard so far made no sense at all. In truth, she seems crazy because it is clearly irrational. In her mind, she can somehow understand it. She just cannot grasp why those words sound so seductive. Her whole being is telling her with all its might not to refuse this opportunity. She wants to obey her and leave all the decisions of her life in this girl's hands. Finally, she realizes the same thing had happened with Keba. She said this proposal seemed utterly ridiculous. Even so, she chose to do as the girl said. With that, everything was settled between them. Now there would be a very simple order for her to carry out. She was told to kiss the boy tied to the bed, because at the end of every fairy tale, the prince and princess kiss and live happily ever after. And if she decides to do as ordered, she will make her experience all the intensity that romance has to offer. Everything about this exotic girl from head to toe, it is as if she was born to command. As soon as she obeyed, she was praised. For their next task, they would punish the boy and Rio's help would be needed. Keba has no idea why this is happening because he has done nothing to deserve punishment. Desperate, he wants to know what he has done to deserve this. Then she said he ended the call without permission and Keba tried to explain. But it is not a problem. She will make him look even better, even though the process may be a little painful. What she will do now is pierce his tongue. He cannot believe what is about to happen as she tells him not to pull his tongue back. Desperate, he doesn't know how she will pierce his tongue. For that reason, she needed help and asked Rina to open a package for her, because it is necessary to sterilize the instruments before using them. Kiba is becoming increasingly frightened, realizing this will actually happen, and the needle she will use is truly enormous. She told him to stay still and remember that he is her puppet. Whenever he disobeys her, he will be punished. But there is no need for him to be afraid. He should just allow it to happen. Pretend he is a baby and let others take care of him. Slowly, she begins to pierce his tongue. She said the needle was almost all the way through. Finally, she had pierced his tongue with the needle. Kiba struggles to hold back tears as he feels his tongue ache. A generous amount of blood had come out, so she asked Rina to bring her a towel. Rina promptly handed over the item, wanting to know if the boy would be okay, and heard from Tamada that nothing bad would happen. She does not intend to kill him or anything of the sort, but she made it clear that this is what happens every time he disobeys her, because disobedient puppets must be punished. That girl over him is definitely a demon. And after the tense moment, she embraced him tenderly in her lap. She said he had done very well to endure the pain. She continued to caress him as if he were a child. His punishment had already ended. However, during it, he had behaved very well. Because of this, he would receive a gentle pat on the head. To her, the two are extremely adorable. She can't resist the urge to adore them. That's why she wishes for there to be no barriers between them. She asked if they know what is the thing people are most obsessed with, because she believes that thing is love. Love drives people crazy and makes them obsessive. That's what love does to human hearts. And for them to become completely irreplaceable to each other, they should do something quite naughty together. Kiba ended up being surprised by the proposal, but she knows it's exactly what he desires. So they should prepare to start doing it. She began to undress in front of him. Kiba said they couldn't do that, as it wouldn't be ethical. To which Tamada replied that's precisely why they're doing it. If they share a secret like this, they will also share a special connection. Since the two are already special to her, she wants to become special to them as well. She proposed that they have an honest love triangle. For instance, she asked if when she hugs him like this, he doesn't feel comforted. When hugged, the body releases hormones that help cope with stress and anxiety. She asked Rina to join them as well, to which she promptly agreed. The three found themselves lying on the same bed. Kiba's heart was beating uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Rina felt that the sensation of touching him was warm. It would be much warmer if they were naked. The mere suggestion of it drove the boy crazy. Tamada wanted to know if he had ever seen people engaging in intercourse, and he wondered why that had become the topic at that moment. She didn't want to know if he had seen it online, but in real life. Not only had he never seen anything, but he also avoided thinking about the subject. She would really like to see that now. She suggested they try it right there. As a shared secret among them, it would be perfect. She warned him that he was forbidden to say they couldn't do it. If he truly likes her, then he already desires to do it. She asked him not to disappoint her, and Rina affirmed that she could do it too. The boy wished she would wait a little, but before he could react, she was already on top of him. In his mind, he wondered if it was really right to do this. There was no way this could happen, and before the act could proceed, a man opened the apartment door. Rihanna had no idea who this person was, and casually, Tometa greeted him because he was her father. Furious, he wanted to know what was going on there. He said she should start explaining, but Tometa wanted to know how he had found this place. This made him hesitate to respond to her. He said he had used a location tracking app, something that was completely disapproved of by his daughter. Even so, he wanted her to explain what was happening. Provocatively, she asked him what he thought was happening there. There was a boy and a girl lying together in the same bed. He should say what's happening just by looking. Starting to worry, he said she couldn't do this and picked her up in his arms. Since she wasn't married yet, she shouldn't go beyond that point. He also wanted to know if this was the Kiba she had mentioned and if they were dating. Before answering, she asked her father to calm down, but he couldn't believe how composed she was. The only thing she wanted was to make the boy happy, and that everything was fine, there was no problem at all. Concerned, he asked if the boy had forced her to do it, and Kiba said he would never do that. If he was wrong, the young people better start explaining. But there wasn't much for them to explain. Kiba said they couldn't, at least he was quick to respond. Raising his hand to his head, he decided it would be better to calm down. He would have a conversation with his daughter later. Kiba was impressed that this was Tometa's father because he was much younger than expected. Then he approached Kiba. He said it was already curfew time and he would take him home. But there was something Tometa had to say about it. The boy was living with her in her house. Learning this in that manner left her father speechless. Smiling, he asked his daughter to let Kiba talk to him alone, which she promptly allowed. Now they will take a small car ride together. Of all possible situations, this one is quite complicated. The car starts moving, and the man finally addresses Kiba. He says he will ask a few questions, and Kiba should think carefully before answering, because everything will depend on his answers. He warns that he might not be able to maintain his composure. Completely agitated, he begins accelerating the car more than he should. He says he is prepared to crash the car into a pole and kill them both. So Kiba should answer honestly about his relationship with his daughter. The road is straight for a while, but there is a sharp curve ahead, next to a cliff. If the boy doesn't wish to die now, he should answer sincerely. He then asks if he and his daughter are dating, and Kiba says they are not. Hearing this, he assumes their contact is purely physical, but Kiba denies this too. As the boy hesitates briefly, the man asks if they have been intimate. Kiba says they have done nothing, but admits that they have kissed. After hearing this, the man freezes completely. He asks again if they really kissed, while Kiba pleads for him to watch the road. Furious, he says he is going to kill the boy. Kiba says that even though they kissed, he wasn't the one who initiated it. To her father, these are nothing but excuses. However, what Kiba says is definitely not an excuse. Moreover, she is the person who saved his life. If not for her, he would have died. That's why he treats her with respect and wishes she would respect herself more as well, because he believes she is someone capable of saving anyone from any situation. Someone who may appear crazy but can change everything, and that is precisely why she can do what she does. And he wishes to make her happy. After finishing, he starts screaming as the car is about to crash into the guardrail. With the speed they were going, the car broke through the barrier. As they were falling, Kiba felt his body floating as if everything around him was in slow motion. He had become a spectator of his own life. The man had done everything in his power for the girl's sake. He remembered past days when he was younger. He became the company president's secretary at a very young age, a position many presumed was due to the president's fondness for him. There was a rumor that in his free time he acted as the president's daughter's babysitter. He met her when she was just a child, and Kubaru was very happy to meet him. His first impression of her was that she seemed like any other child. She already knew her father had asked him to take care of her and apologized for taking up his free time. She told him not to worry about her because she would stay in her room. Though she spoke like an adult, the girl was very polite. Trying to be friendly, he said he would like to play with her. She smiled, saying the man was lying. She said there was no need to be polite. That caught him off guard because she really behaved like an adult. Still, she was just a child, and it was okay for her to be a little selfish. That's how children are supposed to be. After hearing this, she suggested they could play together. Immediately, she started playing tag with him, but the man grew concerned because they were still inside the house. Since he had said that children should be a little selfish, she decided she would only stop when she was caught. It didn't take long for him to finally catch her. He said she was full of energy, but that's normal for a child. In his arms, she asked if she had been childish enough. This made him start thinking about it. She was definitely very different from other children. The young woman apologized for calling him out so suddenly. She really liked him and wanted to know if he would go out with her. This made him happy, and although he appreciated her feelings for him, he refused the invitation. Because the woman inviting him was already married. In tears, she said her relationship was in shambles. He was one of the few people who treated her well, and she thought he would accept her. But cheating is still wrong, and she needs to resolve things with her husband. Pulling herself together little by little, she realized that this was good advice. She apologized to him for letting her emotions take control of her. This made him grateful because she realized that it wasn't possible. Since he was young, he had never been able to say no to people like her. The woman approached him once again, saying he was despicable. Even though she had already filed for divorce, things were still not okay. He asked her to calm down, and the young woman said he would go out with her if he divorced. But he had never said that. She cried even more, saying she finalized the divorce because of what he had said. He should have rejected her from the start. Now he's stuck in an even more complicated situation. Yet he can't leave her alone because he's worried about what might happen. Surely she might end up single for the rest of her life. Once he identifies this weakness in someone, he can't detach from them. That's his greatest flaw. He knows this better than anyone. A man called out to him and asked if it was really true. Someone should report it to the boss, and it would be better if he did it. There's a lot happening at the office, and romance between coworkers is a problem. But for the boss, the true story doesn't matter, even if he's being accused of something serious. All he cares about is his employee's work. He wanted to know the name of his colleague. Outside, he walked until he heard some people talking. Suzuki, the crying woman, had been fired. Something must have happened because she wouldn't be dismissed so abruptly. Even though she was overdramatic, she had already had a workplace affair before, and she was more of a nuisance than anything else. To him, the president's decision was correct because he had been falsely accused. Although we can't say if firing her was the right punishment, it's good to know the president is on his side. However, the favor stops there. The boss doesn't care about how he feels, only about the work he does. Elsewhere, the child calls out to him. She wants to know if he's okay, because he looks a bit down and she'd like to know if something happened. The only one who genuinely cares about him is this little girl. And before that thought could even become clear in his head, he noticed a mark on her arm. She said she had been a bad child and it was her fault, but he grew worried about Kubaru. So he asked how she got that bruise on her arm. She said it happened when her father got very angry and hit her with a shoe. He doesn't understand why the president would do that, and the girl revealed it was because of her test score at school. She had scored 0, which was unusual since she typically did very well. She got deliberately handed in a blank paper because her father never praises her and she desperately wanted his attention. As a result, she ended up being punished by him, as expected. After that day, her wounds began to multiply. Concerned, he asked if she had been hit again, and she said yes. Once again, she handed in a blank sheet as her answer, and during dinner, she had an accident. Now she thinks her father simply hates her. The young man said he doesn't like his father either, and she said she wishes he could be her real dad. Those words deeply moved him. That situation couldn't continue. Going to the director, he said the abuse had to stop. He asked him to stop hurting the child. The director said those bruises were from her playing alone and that she sometimes acts like a boy. But he didn't believe that, and losing patience was told to get back to work. Even so, the young man kept insisting, and the president said he shouldn't mix personal matters there. They were business partners, not friends. Not even talking to him solved the situation. It might even make him more violent toward the child. Now he has no idea what to do. While he was thinking of a way to resolve it, the president was hospitalized because he got cancer. And even so, the child bravely stayed by his side. The only ones visiting him in the hospital were them. After many years and multiple hospitalizations, his condition worsened significantly, and he passed away without a worsening in his behavior toward her. Even his funeral was lonely. Only the two of them were there. And that day, while they were alone, she asked him a question. She asked if he would like to be her father. That simple question changed his life, because she was able to say to his sinking heart. Standing before him is the little girl he couldn't protect, and she said she needed him to keep protecting her. That's when he finally made a decision. He would do everything in his power to help her. After making that decision, he became her new father. The girl was very happy with her new dad, and she hoped they could grow closer and closer. That's why he has to protect her. Slowly, Cable wakes up inside the car. He is dangling somewhere along the cliffside. The car will soon fall to the ground. They need to get out quickly. He tries to wake the man, asking if he's okay. The man mumbles a few things, and Kiba is relieved that he's still alive. He asks if the man can move, and the man says yes. Puzzled, he asks if the boy is trying to help him, and indeed, that's what Kiba is doing. Not understanding why the boy is doing this, the man asks, and Kiba says it's because he is Kubaru's father. That's why he's helping. The girl would be furious if he just left the man there. The man starts crying, which worries Kiba. Now he has a different impression of the boy. They are different. Unlike him, the boy is capable of acting to help others. At Kubaru's side, the boy wouldn't be bad. So the man asks Kiba to take care of his daughter. Confidently, Kiba says he will. But the idea of them sleeping in the same house is still too much for him. Kiba agrees, and the man thanks him for understanding. Now they need to return to where she is. Right after they resolve this mess, with injuries on their faces, they finally return. The girl complains that they took a long time and wants to know what they were doing. Moreover, it looks like they got beaten up. The man approaches to talk about them living in the same house, but Kumaru interrupts him, saying it's fine. And she asks if he's really going to say she can't do that. She doesn't like it at all when he disagrees with her. This terrifies him. He then says it's fine and that she has his full approval. Kiba asks if it's really fine, and the man says it's not. But since she means everything to him, he's afraid to say no to her. Approaching Kiba, he starts begging him. He shouldn't make any mistakes that he can't undo, and he asks if they understand each other. It seems his chaotic life is going to continue. Given how close they are, the man asks Kiba to keep some distance. Looking out the window, a girl is lamenting because she did it again. No matter what she does, things always end up that way. She only feels relief every time she kills someone. People are always trying to hide their flaws. It's so easy to bend a body once it's dead. Suddenly, they say they can't look at her anymore and disappear from her life. No one loves her. And that man was just like all the others. Sitting on the ground, she wishes she were dead. A boy approaches her, and she asks if he's okay. He asks if she'd like something to drink, and she agrees. Elsewhere, he asks her name. She says her name is Sashigawa Hiro. She wants to know why he approached her, and the boy says it's because she seemed lost. He says he also used to live full of anxiety, wishing every day that he wouldn't wake up alive. But he eventually found something that helped him escape that situation. She wants to know what it was, and he says it's very simple. He started believing in the existence of God. That was all he needed, a belief. To her, it's impossible to believe in something that doesn't exist. But the boy insists she should believe so she can be saved, just as he was. Hearing these words, she asks him a question. She wants him to be her God. That way, she could believe in him. It doesn't matter if God is real or not. She just hopes someone can save her. And maybe he's that person. Not knowing how to respond, he says he's going to the bathroom quickly. Time passes and he doesn't return. The waitress comes over saying they are closing orders. With that, she asks for the bill. She leaves furious because he was just a liar. He had approached her saying he wanted to save her. And before she knew it, he was already inside that suitcase. She feels like people are always honest right before they leave, as if showing who they truly are. And when she kills them, they belong to her for that brief moment, becoming the most intense memory in her consciousness. That's why she can't stop doing what she does. Even so, she hopes that one day salvation will come for her. She was very tired, it's already morning, and that's the first bus of the day. She should go home and sleep a bit. On her way, she bumped into a boy completely bandaged up. That happened because she wasn't looking ahead. Suddenly, she held the boy's face with both hands. She kept staring at him, making Kiba start to feel uncomfortable, until she asked if he was okay. Since he was covered in bandages, she was worried the bump might have reopened some of his wounds, but he said he was fine. That relieved her, and she asked him to be more careful moving forward. As he watched her walk away, he realized she was a very tall woman. As she got farther away, she started to dwell on the situation. After she had held his face, the boy seemed frightened. Not even she knew why she did such things. She thought his expression looked like one of disgust, making her wonder if that's really what he had felt. It couldn't be. She started overthinking everything. Now she's worried he might have thought she was suspicious. She couldn't handle it anymore. She decided she needed to clear things up immediately. They were celebrating because school had finally ended. She wanted to know if Keba would be free afterward. There was a sale happening nearby. Since she and Rio were heading somewhere else, she wanted him to go to the sale for her. Keba agreed to her request. Trying to recall the uniform, the woman realized he was just a student. After agreeing to the favor, Tamada happily thanked him. The kiss left him flustered, and she said they would see each other soon. But all of it sometimes frustrated him. He couldn't give up on her like this. Knowing he had something to do, he decided to hurry. The discount was only available until 6, and it was already past 5. As he ran, a hand grabbed him by the shirt. It was the woman he had bumped into earlier. She wanted to know what he thought of her. He finally recognized her after looking at her face. Behind them, Tamada had found them. She asked the woman to step away from Keba. Intrigued, the woman asked if she was referring to her. She said it wasn't her intention to scare anyone. She just wanted to have a brief conversation with him. That seemed to spark Tamada's curiosity. She said that unfortunately the boy belonged to her, and the woman should take her hands off him. With that, they started to leave. To the woman, that girl spoke as if she didn't care about her. This made her think harder. She wondered what expression Tamada would make if she were at death's edge, but she couldn't act on it and had to restrain herself. Kiba wasn't able to buy the eggs, but Tamada said it was fine since they at least managed to buy ice cream. And the ice cream had interesting and eye-catching colors. Tamada loved that flavor, which was brightly pink and tasted like mint chocolate. From its appearance, he would never have guessed that was the flavor. She offered him some, but he declined because he didn't like chocolate. Knowing this, she said she wouldn't forget. She kept eating until some of it spilled on her clothes. It upset her a bit. She decided to finish the ice cream quickly so she could wash her blouse. Meanwhile, he and Rio were told to behave themselves. They agreed to wait for her return, and Tamada thanked them. She was in the restroom, washing her hands. Fortunately, there hadn't been any stains left. It was time to head back, but the tall woman was behind her. She gagged her. She told her to stay quiet from now on, and if she made a scene, she would be killed immediately. Outside, her friends noticed she was taking longer than expected. Something might have happened, so Kiba asked Rio to check the restroom. Agreeing with him, she said she would take a look. Upon reaching the restroom, she didn't find anyone there. Tamada was no longer there. Returning to Kiba, she said that Tamada had disappeared, and she couldn't find her anywhere. However, she had found something in the restroom. It was the scarf she usually wore, lying on the floor. Starting to worry, she thought Tamada might have been kidnapped. Rio fell to the ground in concern. Kiba tried to wake her up, but he was met with a forceful headbutt. What had awakened in her place was her other personality, Rina. Irritated, she said they would search for Tamada immediately. She asked if there was a tracker on her phone that made Kiba remember something. He had registered her headphones and phone, so they could locate her device using his phone. In a small, enclosed space, she was being held hostage. Blindfolded, she asked why the woman was doing this, and begged her to let her go. To the kidnapper's surprise, her victim was reacting very calmly, but she only feels relieved when she gets to know people, because the unknown makes her feel afraid. When you understand people, you stop fearing them. Now she wants the girl to show her who she really is. With a mocking expression, she asked the woman to let her return home quickly. As soon as her eyes were blindfolded, she thought it wasn't the woman's intention to end her life. But when the blindfold was removed, she assumed the woman's intentions had changed. The woman watches her, wondering what is wrong with this girl. She cannot figure out what the girl is hiding. She asked if she wasn't afraid of anything, but Tamada doesn't know what she should be afraid of in this situation. If it's about dying, she isn't scared at all. In fact, she's very curious about it. She's interested in knowing what happens after death. Maybe it's just emptiness, or perhaps there really is another life. Only the dead find out. To her, death is just part of life, which is why she doesn't fear it. And there's something she likes even more, saving the best for last. Since she knows she won't die here, she has a proposal for the woman. She asks to have control of the woman's life. Based on the location they obtained, Tamada must be somewhere around here. Getting closer to the location, they assume she's in one of these apartments. A strange sound makes them uneasy. Kiba tells the girl to find a place to hide and says he'll shout if something happens. If she hears him, she should call the police. Worried about him, she begins to wonder if he'll be okay. After all, he could be in trouble if the kidnapper is a bigger man or armed. After running, he finds himself at a dead end. But this isn't the time for him to lose focus. Tamada has already saved him before, so he needs to repay the favor. Now it's his turn to save her. The woman had punched the wall so hard that her hand got hurt. She told the girl not to talk about things she doesn't understand, because she wouldn't be able to do anything for her. Confidently, the girl says no one knows for sure, but she might at least understand what's going on in the woman's mind. That statement worries the woman even more. Being understood is something she has always sought. The girl said this woman must have suffered a lot in her life. No one understands her, and no one loves her. Everyone approaches her with their own interests and then abandons her. Those people are all irresponsible. She understands her because she's been through a similar situation. When no one loves her, she makes people love her. And when God doesn't exist, you have to create one. That's why she's willing to become her God. If she wishes to follow her, she should start by untying those ropes. If she decides to untie her with her own hands, the girl promised to save her from despair. But if she doesn't, she can move forward and finish her off. She should just be aware that salvation will never come to her if she chooses that path. Kiba struggles to break down the door, and upon entering, he is stunned. That strange woman from earlier is kneeling, kissing Tamada's hand. Looking at him, she says she always believed in him. She was sure he would come to her aid, but he wants to know what's happening here. Tamada explains that the woman untied her ropes. Not understanding anything, Kiba asks who kidnapped her. Then, calmly, Tamada explains she was kidnapped by the same person who set her free. The woman says she gave up on killing her, because now she sees her as her god. This statement leaves Kiba completely baffled. Now she says it's time for the first divine revelation. Tamada tells the woman she should no longer kill people, unless ordered to do so, and she asks if the woman can bear that burden. The woman responds that she probably can. Then she realizes they haven't introduced themselves yet. She says her name is Tamada and asks the woman for her name. The woman hesitates for a moment before introducing herself as Sachigo, a hero. After the formalities, Tamada says it's a pleasure to meet her. Seeing her smile, Kiba feels it has the innocence of a child, but at the same time it seems equally cruel. Outside, the other girl tries to enter. She wishes someone could explain the whole situation to her. At school, Tamada asks Kiba to look at her because she's wearing this summer uniform. Once again, that time of year has arrived. She says it must be a relief for him to have his arm free. Then the boy asks what happened after Sachigawa. Tamada says the woman contacts her from time to time. That response seemed too simple, and he asked if that was really all. Tamada said she simply left the woman alone, which made Kiba concerned. He couldn't understand why that woman was alone. He heard Tamada would save her and didn't understand why she had done that. But for her, the answer was very simple. Salvation is built through pain, and it's necessary for her to suffer much more. Otherwise, Tamada couldn't become the benevolent goddess she intends to be. As Kiba imagined, the girl was simply toying with her. He told her she was going too far. While they were talking, someone approached them. It was the jerk from earlier, the one who used to bully Kiba. The guy wanted to know if Kiba had a minute to talk. Tamada said he didn't need to go as it was probably just a waste of time anyway. The jerk said it wasn't a problem, even if it was a waste of time, because he had something to discuss with Kiba. They left the room, escorted by Tamada's menacing glare. On the rooftop, Kiba said he would rather not talk to him. Getting closer, the jerk said the boy still annoyed him a lot. He asked if Kiba was the one who had posted the video online. That was a smart move, and he wondered if it was the transfer student's idea. Regardless, Kiba wanted to know what he had to say. Unexpectedly, he had come to apologize, something Kiba hadn't anticipated. It made him so angry that he ended up punching the jerk in the face. He didn't know why that happened. Kiba was furious because he shouldn't apologize as if he hadn't done anything wrong. But the jerk didn't seem to understand. He said he was just trying to be friends with him. The only thing he wanted was for them to be friends. Completely enraged, Kiba asked if he had forgotten what he had put him through. That's why he came to apologize, because he knew an apology wouldn't fix things. And while trying to explain, he got punched again. Irritated, he asked how many more times Kiba was going to hit him. Kiba couldn't believe what was happening. To him, it was unfair that the guy was trying to make amends. He wished the jerk would remain a jerk, because if he changed, there would be no one left to hate. If the jerk were a decent person, he'd realize that Kiba truly deserved to be bullied. He said Kiba was a real weirdo. He had come to apologize, but if Kiba didn't want to forgive him, he could continue hating him, which made him ask if Kiba was against the idea of the jerk lifting this weight off his shoulders. Apparently, Kiba supported that idea. If so, he invited him to settle it with a fight. If the jerk won, Kiba would have to accept his apology. But if Kiba won, he could do whatever he wanted with him. Kiba said it was too easy for him to say such things, because he could fight on equal footing with others. But Kiba couldn't do that. He immediately kicked him between the legs. He would fight dirty because he didn't care. Besides, he was terrified of the jerk. Even so, he kept punching him, until the jerk managed to grab both of his hands. He said he'd been getting punched since he started talking, and it hurt a lot. It was Kiba who made things unequal, because he always looked down on him, even though he tried. All he wanted was to talk to him. Kiba now realized there was a confused heart in front of him. The jerk didn't like being ignored all the time. Now it was his turn to hit, but Tamada appeared to separate them. Letting fists do the talking is a wonderful idea at the epitome of youth, but it's not everything. Something is still missing, and she knows exactly what it is. It's missing a generous dose of love. Approaching the jerk, she asked if they should create a little love. He had no idea what she was suggesting, and as she left, she said goodbye to Kiba. She told Kiba not to run away because once she returned, they would settle things. He could only watch in shock as the two walked away. After that, class went on as usual. Neither Tamada nor the jerk returned to class. That started to irritate him. Ahara came over to ask if he knew where Tamada was. She had left with the jerk. Remembering that she had said she would create love, he thought of some unusual things that shocked him. It couldn't be that. If it were, he couldn't bear it. His phone received a notification, and he found out she had returned home earlier. So he said goodbye to Ahara. He ran home to see Tamada. When she enters, she's greeted by him, and he says the jerk has something to say. Kiba wasn't expecting to hear anything from him. The first thing he imagined was that the news wouldn't be good, that the jerk would brag about the things they had done. He approaches Kiba to confess something. Kiba asks him not to come any closer until he hears the jerk say, in fact, that he loves him. He finally realized this after talking with Tamada. What he feels is actually love. Kiba has no idea how to respond to that, so Tamada whispers a few things to him. She reveals that, in a way, she brainwashed him. After all, she knows Kiba doesn't want to be bullied again. To prevent that, she made the jerk fall in love with him. She managed to pull it off even more smoothly than she expected. It's definitely way too insane. The jerk wants to know what they're talking about, and Kiba tells him to shut up. Holding his hand, the jerk says he'll do his best to make Kiba like him. Unfortunately, the situation had gotten worse in a way Kiba hadn't anticipated. Approaching him, Tamada says she has something to share. She'd like to have a girls' night that evening. She apologizes for the short notice. He could stay at the jerk's house in the meantime. Of all the possible outcomes, this one is easily among the worst. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tab's channel.